Talks. I'm your host, Tanya Ricketts, and joining me tonight is Andrea Austin. Welcome.
Hi, Tanya.
Yeah,
Nice to be here. Thank you.
thank you. So tonight we're going to be talking about setting our eyes on higher grounds, and you're going to share your personal story on what that means. What I'd like to do is take a moment, everyone, just to introduce you to Andrea joining us. Real talk, real people, real issues, real events. Andrea she is involved with the Love Experiment Project, which is Love Evolution. I love the idea, the concept, and you also are with your husband, meetandbuild.ca as well. And it's really just about love and connection and like what you say, the love evolution. Um, I love your commitment to life and the commitment of love, where it's just about building and finding self-love, to peeling back the onion layers on insecurity and doubt, which we can all identify and resonate with. You started out doing it for you and your family, and you're now extending it to all of us out here in the world and sharing it and helping us do the same thing. So thank you very much for helping us really capture the essence of inner love in our souls and creating that as a reality for us to experience out in our everyday life and our everyday interactions of what that love looks like. So I commend you, I support you, and I want everybody to know that they can find you on Facebook on andrea.and.austin, Instagram under Andrea underscore and Bill, and LinkedIn under Andrea Lee Austin, meetandbuild.ca, and loveexperiment.com. Whew.
It's a mouthful.
It is, but it's a wonderful mouthful. So Andrea, let's get started. So what does it mean to set your eyes on higher grounds?
So that's a great question. I think from the time I was born, I always knew inside that love and only love is what mattered. And so when I talk about higher grounds, to me, it's about this focus, this unrelenting focus on journeying and experiencing what love means for ourselves. And I don't necessarily at all mean romantic love, although I thought that's what it was. So when I look at this almost energetics of love, which I didn't know at the time, I always knew that there was something guiding us, right? That inner hunch, that inner knowing, but I didn't always listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you led into this conversation, there was self-doubt, there was disbelief, all those things, but there was always this something that kept driving me forward in this life and in this world that kept guiding me right in a certain direction. I'm just a little bit of background. I'm not religious in this life. I'm just talking about an energy, right? So when I say setting to higher grounds, it's about setting the intention and focusing that that's how you're going to drive your life, right? Not allow the beliefs of others, the distraction of others, but to allow that inner knowing to drive true, to allow it to sort of guide, the way, as one might say.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's simple. If it was all so freaking easy, I'd be a billionaire by now. Because we have all these stories and these patterns and these disbeliefs in our mind and in our field and in our families that make us want to doubt, and even in the consciousness of this earth, right?
Right.
So
and when we talk about what I'm hearing in it is mixed with intuition.
Very much so.
And how do we find that intuition as it relates to love, and have the courage, because I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to follow it. It's not even to listen to it, because I think we're listening. It's to have the courage to respond to it.
That's a great way. The reason that I say love plays a role in that intuition is that I'm starting to study metaphysics more. This was more of a natural tendency that I knew, but I'm looking at some of the formal training in the world around metaphysical sciences. And they described love as, well, some could say the absence of fear, but
Mhm.
it's really about following that inner knowing and learning to take action. And so I agree with you. It takes courage, especially when you first start, because the mind wants to say, well, if my gut instinct says I should go here, and then when I do it, it doesn't play out the way the mind thinks it should,
Mhm.
then we think, oh, we did something wrong. And so I've learned where I used to think life was a destination. And I arrived at that. That's a personal story I'm happy to share. At 35, I arrived at that destination and went, wow, did I get here? What I realized is that following that intuitive love, courageous as you build that muscle, that's where the journey of happiness or the journey of the soul, might some say, there's geese in the background. It's the way our fire gets ignited. And
Mhm.
so what I've looked at is we end up in more mundane lives, not as exciting as we'd hoped, not as enjoyable as we thought. And what I've started to realize when I look back is because often we're running a pre-programmed auto script of what we think life should be. And so we fill those, the tick boxes, I call it, of
Right.
life. I got the house, I got the dog, I've got the cottage, and I have some of that still. I'm not in debate, but at the age of 35, I kind of had this out of body experience that we can talk about. And I went, oh, you mean there's something else driving my life besides this crazy little mind of mine? And so when we talk about love and we talk about courageous, I'm talking about following that inner energy, that inner knowing,
Mhm.
right? And strengthening that muscle. Yeah.
So, do you subscribe to the idea then when you talk about that energy, our bodies, if we're still enough and we're really connected to that feeling of feeling the energy within, we actually, our bodies are so intelligent that it can actually tell us what's going to happen 5 days ahead out.
Oh, 100%. I've for sure had visions. I've probably had the most of my life, and didn't know it. But I also know that things can change. We live in a co-creative reality. So to think that we function in isolation, at least in this human form, without being impacted by what's around us, I think is an illusion. There are many factors at play, right? We don't sit on a mountaintop by ourselves anymore. um,
Why not?
but but that's a great way of expressing it for sure. It's like a tuning fork is how I've seen it. It's not something we're taught, most of us. It's not something that we can necessarily learn overnight, but is absolutely a muscle that can be strengthened even in our old age. I'm 53 this week, so
Afraid 53.
right. Thanks, but you don't have to do it as a child, but I think it's a choice. And it even takes courage in the choice to start learning to live differently, from that inner knowing rather
Right.
than the outer chit chat.
And it's so like when I think about equating it back to the whole love aspect of it, it's when we allow ourselves to follow that energy. Like our bodies are it's our guide. And when we follow it, even if we're using the muscles to follow that intuition 5 minutes from now and the next 5 minutes, and we're developing those muscles, it is a form of love that I love myself enough to listen to what? That's how I feel, right? It's like I love myself enough to listen to what it's asking of me.
And as you picked up on, that can be tremendously uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So, like, I'll give you an example of that. I used to sit in a boardroom and I would hear things and know things, but one might say I didn't love myself enough to value what I had to say, speak my
Mm.
truth, and be comfortable with it. And so for a lot of years, using that as one example, there's lots of those. I would not follow my intuition. I would not speak my truth. I would not take that step of action. And literally, in hindsight, not knowing it then, it was actually literally killing me, because I was living this reality of somebody else's truth instead of my own, and sacrificing what I really knew and wanted inside.
Mhm.
And that includes business. I walked my way through a corporate career, loved it, great people, great organization, played in the nonprofit space, but I'd always felt something was missing, and I couldn't tangibly put my finger on it. It was like looking through a bullshit reality, right? And going, I don't know, something feels funky here, But how do you say that, right? And as you get older and practice more, you're getting better at saying it. But my mind so wanted to think that it knew the reality that I needed to live in to feel safe, to feel loved, that it wasn't willing to go out on a limb and do what I knew I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And so in 2012, I had a radical shakeup, and spent, the last 9 years, almost going the other way. It's been pretty entertaining, but realizing quite deeply that when you're really willing to listen, that's where life is. That's where the sweet spot is. And I would say that's where love is.
Mm. And I like the comparison of how you compared it, because when I say this to people, they're like, they don't get it. And you just told me that it's possible for somebody to get it, where you're in this other reality, but it's like killing yourself
Yep, it
in this
is.
whole other reality, because it's not your truth. It's not the reflection of truth and love and how you've designed it. It was never designed. You were never designed to be nurtured energetically through that vehicle.
No,
So it is, I remember sitting in a job and I said, this is the highest form of self hate for myself. And everybody was around me was like, what? What do you mean? You should be grateful to have a job. And I'm like, guys, like I couldn't explain it to somebody. It was like, no, it's the highest form of self hate for myself. It's like, I don't feel like I'm contributing in the way my voice isn't being heard. I'm locked into this box of my creativity is going nowhere. So thank you for resonating with me.
anytime.
And how many times do we do that?
A lot. Yeah.
Right. And,
Yeah.
and I think it's important for human beings to realize that when we are betraying ourselves, that we are slowly dying. And when we talk about physical ailments, you talk about metaphysics, and we talk about quantum physics and how the body works and energy and how it affects our DNA and all the rest of that. It's powerful when we can take ownership and be responsible.
Yeah. And it's funny because I thought I was taking ownership, like I got the university degree and filled all the roles. So I thought I was taking ownership in a way that we're traditionally taught to own our lives. And so the contrast is quite significant. And yeah, it might be a foreign topic to some, but not all. And I know that there's an inner knowing in everybody,
Right.
when something's right or something's wrong. We just haven't really learned to express that in a way. And sometimes it comes out in the ugliest of ways, right? It can come out in rage in our lives. It can come out in throwing everything out the window and starting over. And that's okay too, right? Whoops, that's got to go, right?
Right.
But it's a journey, and if I can inspire that in anyone, it's to get off the train that's not your train and to get
Right.
onto your own choo choo,
For sure. For
because
sure.
that's self love. That is
Absolutely.
the definition of
So
self love. Yeah.
I'm here. So now you're in the corporate world, you're going through your stuff, something's not right. Now we arrive. Let's talk about the Love Evolution project that you're embarking on, where you're now made a decision that you were going to commit to self love. peeling back those onion layers. What sparked it? Was there a catastrophe that happened in your life that forced you?
No, there was a divine intervention. So the answer is yes and no. I did have an out of body experience in the Turks and Caicos with my now ex-husband and 2 children. They were 3 and 6, I think, at the time. Gorgeous little munchies. But they were all down on the pool, and I was up in this beautiful condo, and I hovered above my body. And I swear it was my soul yelling at me, "Are you happy?" And I'm like, shit, no. And so I started listening just that much more attunely and strongly. A girls' weekend led to taking a year sabbatical from my job. So I went from 6 digits to 0. That was tough, given because my head was like, "Oh my God, are you crazy?" Fast forward a year and a half later, the universe led me to the Toronto yoga show in April Fool's Day 2012. And in the first 5 minutes, I met this beautiful, now my partner, Bill Little, who was sharing a technology that nobody would understand. And every part of my inner spidey sense went, "Pay attention, pay attention." And I was like, this stuff don't make no sense, folks. It's not to the linear mind, but there was an inner knowing. And so we journeyed together off and on for 6 weeks. And very quickly, I had a strong inner knowing that there was a destiny coming. This somehow alignment between spirituality, love, and money, interestingly, and economics. So that started 2012. There's a lot of healing, a lot of undoing that needed to occur, and a lot of courageous decisions that, including, in all transparency, feeling that my 2 children primarily needed to be with my ex-husband and not me.
Mhm.
That was probably one of the hardest, because a lot of people have a lot of paradoxes about being a mother and what that means.
Mhm.
I'm happy to say 9 years later, I'm happy with the decision. You'll let me know when they're 27. But they seem great. And a lot thanks to him and his wife, right? But
Great.
that was the ultimate act of self-love. And it took me a lot of years to realize that and see that later. I kept thinking, is there something wrong with me? Am I not the right person? But I had this inner knowing that I needed that time to get more strongly into
Did you know
who I
everything was going
am.
to be okay?
I didn't know everything was going to be okay. So my mind would often get in the way and try to interfere, but I kept following the inner knowing and making decisions that most people might think are irrational. I don't, in hindsight, but followed that inner instinct, and that's how it started. When I first met my partner, in the first 5 minutes, he talked about love. He talked about humanity. He talked about things that I'd never read or heard anywhere else, but it was just like bang, bang, bang. I knew it was the truth. And I knew that we could have a journey together if we chose to.
And
And
is that what started the whole love evolution?
Yeah.
Like the love experiment?
The love evolution part and the love experiment came several years later.
Okay.
When we first came together, there's an old site called clearlyconscious.ca
Mhm.
that we
And
built
you've got
together.
podcasts on Clearly Conscious.
We totally do. And our tagline was experience a new level of love.
Mhm.
But what was funny is we'd go to trade shows, and some of them alternative, metaphysical, more energy focused. And even there, people would look at us cross-eyed, like, love. What does love have? Because love has been just so bastardized and killed, right? From what it means. What I've noticed is that many of us are afraid to love,
Mm.
myself included.
Mhm.
And so for a number of years, we backed out. We stopped using the love word because it was freaking people out.
Right.
And then a couple of years ago, it was reignited. And what I said was the non-negotiable is that we need to express what love means to us
Mm.
and provide a new viewpoint, a new story around love. And so the Love Experiment is actually kind of like a social media site. It's just been launched only in the last few months, where people that we've met over the last 12 years together, 9 for me, 12 for him, have started to join and started to share their perspective of what this means to them. It's not just Anne and Bill following this journey of what we would call as love evolution of the human form, right? Moving forward to this destiny. It sounds hilarious, but it's not quite, to this way of being that's significantly different than what we've really been taught. And so the Love Experiment is simply a forum to be able to share and connect. Love Evolution is the tools. There are tools that showed up to assist in that regard.
So is it like do you guys offer courses, or do you work with individuals one-on-one, or both?
That's a great question. A little bit of everything. So pre-COVID, Anne and Bill would pack up the minivan or the truck, and we would travel from place to place and introduce essentially 2 things. One is how there are tools or divine sciences that are designed to help clear some of the traumatic patterns that exist in not just the mind, okay, but in our energy field, that can be used so that we can strengthen this inner knowing and strengthen that connection and not let the human part detract us quite so much. And we would do that in groups. We would do weekend events, and we would do private one-on-ones. And we still do some of that on Zoom. And I see us traveling again. But what evolved, what was interesting, was a Patreon platform, not something that I'd ever thought about, how to connect this type of community, right, who are focused on evolution, I would say, through love and in whatever form that means for them. So we launched that. And what it did was allow us to connect people differently. So the Love Experiment and Patreon were 2 different ways to introduce people to what we mean by love-based consciousness, get them to explore it in a safer environment, help to stay more connected, because we would travel and then we would see people and then not see them for a year.
Right.
Because it's a rather large country, let alone a rather large globe. And so we've implemented these other ways for people to tune in and connect in a way that's more comfortable with them. And then sometimes fix that. It would mean one-on-one work. Sometimes it would be group, and sometimes it's just discussions, right, about what this means in your life.
Right. And what are you finding the fundamental challenges? Like, there must be a common denominator as you're bringing these communities together.
Yep.
Do you find that there's a common thread of challenges that were faced?
I would say fear of being open,
Fear of being vulnerable,
living your truth, not following others, and fear of connection.
Fear of connection, yes.
Yep, connection to each other, fear of getting hurt.
But yet we're craving it as human beings so much, but we're so resistant to it out of, what are we like, and I'm just here in this moment, just thinking, like, what is it about us human beings that is so afraid of what we want and that connection? It's a crazy question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't pretend to know the answer, but what I've observed is we are, if you look at us like say I'm a person, but say I'm a person, right? And we go through life, and this is not just our life, but the lineage of our historical family lives. And there's a lot of work out there in science that's showing this, is our cells and our brain wire actually pick up on the patterns of our stories. And a lot of the stories, if you go back in humanity's history in the last several hundred years, have been predominantly based on pain, suffering, and fear.
Yes. And that's why we have such a hard time getting rid of our trauma. This is strictly my theory. we won't allow our bodies to forget the feeling and the emotion that's attached to that trauma.
Oh, I'm living proof of that, sister. Uh, sorry, let's just explain, okay? So it makes sense though, because there's some physiological hardwired responses that there is protection mechanisms that are built in. And so we can't even explain. We might have the biggest passion and the biggest story and the greatest thing in our life. And then there's a part of us that kicks back and goes, don't go there. Don't go there. And the way I look at it is there's this almost like dichotomy at play, right? Between the inner passion and then all this shit going on subconsciously in many cases, sometimes within our energy field, sometimes within our lineages, if you want to get into some of the science of lineage patterns that we can't even explain why we're acting the way we're acting. It
Right.
makes no freaking sense.
Right.
And many of those stories we're playing out without even realizing. We're just running auto responders. And so I say love because, you know, truly, if we could fully accept each other, fully love each other, I don't think any of this shit would matter. But the truth is that's not the reality that we're living in right now. And so I see it as planting seeds and laying a different foundation for a future reality that I would say is based in love.
Mm-hmm. Disrupting all those. And I, when I go through stuff, I'm like, how can I disrupt you?
Right. What you need to go. Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
what do I think what's helped me along the way is learning to be authentic in the moment, even if it's uncomfortable. So to have the support around me intentionally, even if I didn't know you, but to be authentic enough. And I think I was authentic with you in our phone call when we initially had our first phone call, was being authentic in the moment to say XYZ, but to allow that individual to be in my life saying, I know what's going on. I know what you're doing. Let me stand with you and help you disrupt those energies so that we can change the course of the patterning that's taking place within your body. I think that the support system is so essential for every human being to have.
Yeah, I agree. I I used to think that when Bill and I first started that we would be that support network. I'm not convinced anymore. I think there are some extremely beautiful support networks out there. Um, what I'd love to see more and more consistently is that I'm going to call it space for love, letting people self explore what this
Mhm.
journey means for them rather than being told what it needs to be for them. Because every individual and every experience is so unique. And I think long gone are the days of, you know, the guru worship that, you know, I have to be like, and I'm not knocking this by any stretch, like Buddha or like Jesus or any of those things. I'm not saying they're not great icons, but this is a journey about each individual exploring what life and love means for them and
Mhm.
allowing that energy of love to drive their decisions and what's correct for them. There's
Mhm.
been, you know, enough control and manipulation and telling others what we think is right or wrong for them. I'd really
Mhm.
like to see that empowering, more nurturing network that doesn't mean there aren't great things to be shared and taught from and learned from, but make it a journey of self exploration, which brings it back to the self love.
Right, right, absolutely. It's interesting from my upbringing. Again, I'm not religious either. However, I was brought up reading the Bible
Yep, me
from a
too.
whole different space. And you know, it's on my website on the Tanya experience, which is exactly that, creating space, you know, to have a human exploratory experience.
Yeah.
And my father taught me, seek ye the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all will be added to you. And his interpretation and my interpretation of that with his teachings was study thyself, know thyself, unlock the window to thy soul. Again, on my website, I say, you are your greatest asset. The most interesting person you will ever meet in your lifetime is you.
It's you.
And that to me is self-love, when you get to understand yourself on such a deep level that you understand what energizes you, what fuels you, and not just from the superficial, what motivates me, but really that
Oh,
deeper, as you talk about that energetic, deeper set of what that cell requires, what makes your blood flow, what moves the energy within your sphere. And when we really can capture that, and that's evolution, that's where we're moving towards. And to be able to have that space to explore that and understand what that feels like, not even just what it needs, but what does it feel like? Why
when
are we
I,
be like anybody else?
yeah, yeah. So the way I would describe this is it feels like the word that usually comes to me is expansion.
Hmm.
So if you walk into a situation where you're vulnerable, I love the way you phrase that. And even though there's fear that goes with that, what typically comes out of that experience is this, oh my God, that felt really good. I'm so glad I did that. Right. And so that expansion experience, whether it be climbing the Himalayas, I don't really care, or going to Starbucks and having a coffee, is learning to drive our lives from that place where something feels expansive for us, not retractive,
Hmm.
right? When I look at fear and repression and all those things, right? If you can tangibly just sit in a room, and anybody can do this, and you feel that energy or you feel that conversation, you watch, you start to shrink, you start to
Right.
go, ooh, this feel.
Physically, it just
Right. So you're looking for those inspirations where something niggles you, and your heart or your body goes, oh yes, 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 yes. And then the mind kicks in and goes, no, 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 no. Right. So it's about starting to follow that almost experiential feeling of yes. Like when somebody first says to you, do you want to go west? Some of us will go, eh, and somebody else will go, oh yeah. Then learning to trust and follow that,
right.
and just say yes, I'm going to go for it. And that's
Absolutely.
expansion, that's experience, that's love.
And when we think about it from the physical contact, like as you were talking about the expansion, your body naturally moves in that expansive way and your lungs open up. And what was the first thing, like when you watch this video back, Andrea's body just started to breathe. Ooh, I want more of that. And you were breathing. So think about what it's doing to our bodies as we're breathing oxygen in and our lungs are expanding and we're smiling and we feel good. We feel that expansion. What takes place? We move into a space of gratitude. And that gratitude, like so all that goodness, all that love being poured in is like a vortex, that energy vortex that just starts sucking more of that towards you.
Yep.
And then you talked about now the retraction, the opposite of that, we shrink, we close up, we shrivel up, we stop breathing. It's just so important to pay attention to the whole picture, not just the mind and the heart, but the body and what the body's doing and how it's responding. And we smile and it opens up. It's just such a beautiful thing.
It is, yeah. The only thing that I ponder sometimes is, like we talked about earlier, the body still has certain physiological responses.
Mm.
So this is a funny story. We're in our living room once in the early years. Bill and I came together, and he was upstairs doing a private one-on-one session with somebody, and I was speaking to the husband. And he started to talk about all these things that brought in a lot of fear, right? Fear of the unknown, fear of this, fear of that. And I was like literally sitting there. I'm not saying a word, but watching the energy of what he was bringing in and how my body was responding. And yet, in that moment, there was nothing for me to be afraid of,
Mm.
right? So, what I've come to recognize is the body still has physiological responses when it thinks it's in trouble, fight or flight,
Mm. Hmm.
right? And so we also have to be aware sometimes that there are patterns that we still need to dissipate energetically and physiologically in the form to help us move through that fear so that we can get to a deeper state of neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
So that when we're in a situation, we can discern a little bit, oh, that's where I want to go. And not still be triggered by some of the old subconscious
So how do
beliefs that
we
are
do that?
playing out. So, how would I do that right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Meaning, give me a little bit more context to your question.
So now your body is now picked up, I'm going to say through osmosis, through energetically, you're picking up on the other person's frequency, which is triggering something that's already existent in you.
Yep.
So how do you dissolve that within you that it no longer shows up in your reality, even if
So,
it's present?
so
So
in my world,
your
that's
body
where
doesn't recognize it. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that helps because I was like, give me a little more context,
Yeah.
Tanya, so I can be making
Yeah.
sure I
So your body
answer
no
as
longer recognizes that when it appears.
so I would say in the beginning, I didn't always know. And that's part of the journey. Um, what conveniently showed up in my life and has made the most significant difference, but not all, is one, finding a community that understood this and started to teach and become more aware that that's what was going on, because I had no freaking clue, right? Like none, nada. I just responded and then I ran, and that was the end of that story, right? Um, but what for me made a difference was actually a technology. And so it was a sound based technology that acted as an energy interrupter, might be
Mm,
how I looked at it, that started to deal with some of the subconscious mental and emotional patterns that I was still playing out but didn't know it.
mhm,
And as that and other things that I introduced into my life focused on dissipating some of those patterns, what happened over time is greater clarity.
mm,
So I can still be in a fear situation. It actually happened just prior to COVID. Um, I was in somebody's living room and they were totally excited about what was coming. I was like, and he was talking, and I could feel the fear that was going to follow, right? This experience. And I watched my body and I started to freeze. And then I caught myself and I realized that all I was doing was picking up on the energy of what was being brought into the room. And I wasn't always this aware. This has taken time and I'm still strengthening the muscle.
for
Trust me.
sure, for sure, right.
But in that moment, I realized that it wasn't fear that was causing me. I realized that I had a different perspective, a different
Mm,
opinion, and I wasn't used to expressing it.
mm,
And so I've often allowed fear to dominate in a room, and then I would disappear and not say anything. And I realized that I just had a very different perspective from this individual. So, like the beginning when we talked about, it's a muscle that you grow, you start to strengthen. You realize when you're in a triggered state
mm,
that it's not necessarily the right time to be making those types of decisions, but you find tools and techniques to dissipate the energy or the emotion around our underlying triggers so that we can intuitively follow our inner knowing more strongly than responding and reacting to the world around us.
right. So let's explore that experience a little more. So now you
Sure.
realize that. What do more people, most people, at least in my dealings with individuals, in that moment they start to feel disconnected because they now have they because there's a different perspective. There's nothing in common in that particular moment. So now let's talk about the love aspect of it, the self-love and the projection of love. So what happens in that moment is there's still a fear now of rejection, of lack of connection. Are we now enemies? What exists in that moment of feeling of that realization that there's a different perspective?
I think the most important for me, and I can only speak to that, is that one, recognizing that you do have a different perspective and honoring that, regardless of having a conversation, trying to convince somebody else I'm getting past to the point where I don't want to do that anymore. It's just really honoring and respecting that within yourself and not allowing the imposition of the other person's agenda or beliefs or field to impose into your reality. Now, some of that's going to naturally happen. We're energetic beings, but it's getting stronger in being comfortable in what is truth for you and not truth for you.
Right.
And you're right. When that first starts, I'd always worried about not fitting in. Story of my life. People not understanding me, even if I did express what was inside. And what I've come to recognize is that none of that matters. That one, you don't even have to express, which I used to always think you had to.
Right. We're explaining ourselves.
I need to explain myself instead of just saying, excuse me, I'm going to leave the room and I'm fucking out of here. Right. Like at one point I did this session once with somebody and I realized, I have choice. I can just get up and walk out of a room because I was so taught that you had to be polite. And
we're the Canadians. It's the Canadian
we're
way.
Canadians, eh? Oh my goodness gracious. And so that politeness ruled my world. And so I think it's an honoring of oneself, period. And sometimes that can come out in throwing up everything you think and feel on the inside of you. And it's not perfect and it's not pretty, but oh well. You start to learn to do that. But ultimately, it's about being extremely comfortable in navigating and being okay with whatever outcome, but sticking with what's truth for you and an alignment for you. And if this time in the last year has not taught us that, then nothing has. Because it's been a very interesting period in history. And you really had to gauge what is right for you, right? Not necessarily listen to your neighbor or the masses. I really encourage people to say, go and do what's right for you. And
it's funny in that moment of when you say honoring your truth, I think about being anchored. So I think about being very to this earth, like a big root anchored deeply into this earth in that moment of truth. And I'm participating in that ecosystem of truth, of the beauty of the earth and the consciousness of the earth, the consciousness of truth. And when I think of the consciousness of truth, how we dissolve, at least in my opinion, and what's worked with me working with individuals, is in that moment, the minute we're judging ourselves or worry about being accepted, it's about celebrating the strength that we have in that moment to stand in our truth. And the more we celebrate and honor that in ourselves, we build that muscle faster. We become more grounded. We breathe better because we're now taking it as an inward self-love by celebrating the strength and the courage we have. And it encourages our own self to continue to move forward. I'm not sure if that's been any of your experiences.
Very much so. Very much so. And the only thing I would add to that is that truth could change tomorrow.
Yes.
So just because you think something's truth today doesn't mean you're going to think it tomorrow. And so that was a little bit of a mind bender at first, because I think I'd found the truth. Sorry to be, dramatic, but it's kind of funny,
it's
right?
True. It's comical. So that's the other piece. You can't take it too seriously.
No.
Because it's so I say it all the time. It's an adventure. It's fun. Like you have no idea, which you are absolutely spot on. What's true for you, and that's why it's so important to be present, in my opinion. Because what is true for you in this moment, we can come off in an hour from now. It's not true for you anymore.
Whoops! I changed my mind. Right. And so that's
the evolution.
That's the core element of what I really had. So. Like when I first met Bill, I would be like a dog with a bone. And I'm sure he's going to be laughing because he can hear me in the background right now. right? I'd hold on to something and I'd shake it and I wouldn't let it go. And so the biggest thing that I've learned and that we teach and we share is to let go,
Mhm.
realize you don't know anything. We don't know anything. Find your truth in a moment, find your truth in the day, and then let it go again and let it go again. And that is evolution.
Isn't that energy though? Like when we talk about it from the scientific, energy wants to keep moving. You know,
Always.
energy comes in one hand, goes out the other, giving and receiving. Like it's always circulating. We are participating and sharing and collaborating and coming
Always.
together in that whole communion, the camaraderie of it all. This is how we keep the system moving, the energy flowing.
Yep. And so I'm going to do a small plug because the same can be said for money.
Mm,
So money is energy,
right.
right? And it's so interesting to me when we look at our stories and our patterns, is if you just use that as an illustrative example, the more we hold on or the more we hold off and don't let it flow, every aspect of our life was meant to flow. Life, love, energy, relationships, money, business. And so when we create dormancy, right, we start to crumble or we start to die or however you want to do it. And just like nature, we're meant to flow and organically. And it'll be really interesting to see if we can start to change some of our systems to allow that organic flow and growth that we were meant to have, that we were meant to be.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I like when I'm laughing because something happened a few times. We hear about it in books where, people are talking about building wealth. And when they're building wealth, they hold on to money. They think money's not available, or they get money and all of a sudden they have to give it out. So there's a scarcity in that. And so I said to somebody I was working with, I said, look, change perspective on it. Think about it like this. You get money in your hand and you're looking for, let's just say you had a goal to have $100 and you get $50 in. And then all of a sudden you say, but now something came up and I got to give $50 up and, money, it's just leaking. This individual said, and I said, why don't you change perspective and realize that the universe is asking you to give it up to create space to bring something bigger in.
Yep.
To move it. Let it move because it's bringing something bigger to you. And the person started to practice that. It wasn't easy in the beginning, but started to see their financial wealth expand. So their mindset changed from, it's time for me to give some up in order to create space for some more to come in.
There was a great definition in a book called Sacred Commerce, really interestingly well written. I've got a few in the arsenal. And his definition of abundance, I'm not sure, it was in his book. Let's just assume it was his. The definition of abundance is having what you need when you need it.
Mm.
And prosperity is the ability to share it with others. And as a human, we have, bless you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
We absolutely have an innate desire to give, to
I want
love.
you to say it again for the audience, because I think that's a powerful thing that you just said. Prosperity is.
So I might have them backwards, but we'll go with the same. I believe the interplay of abundance and prosperity didn't matter. Abundance is having what you need when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it isn't about creating the $1 million empire if you don't actually need it in the moment, right?
Right.
Prosperity is the ability to share it with others.
Oh, beautiful.
And that's really rung through. I might have interplayed those two words in the moment.
But it's the concept of understanding it's what you need in the moment. Maybe you don't need
only about what you need in the moment. You might have a vision for $1 million empire. Right. That's great. I'm not saying don't do it, but you don't necessarily need the $1 million today.
Right.
right? You start putting the left foot in front of the right foot. And so often we let money, if we use that as an example, get in our way of following the flow of what we're desiring to create.
Yes. And then on the flip side, the prosperity aspect is the ability to share it.
To let it out, to
Yes.
let it, to
Oh, isn't
support
it beautiful?
the families or the communities or whatever you choose to do with that. But it also wasn't meant to be damned and hoarded.
Yes.
And so it's also a very interesting time in humanity because it's the largest wealth and abundance that has ever existed in human history. And yet many are still holding on to it
Mm.
because of fear. And that's cool, but it also shows you that money's not the only answer,
Mhm.
right? Because we always think, right? But it isn't. It's just an aspect
And it's just
of our
energy because we
reality.
talked about
It's
it.
just energy. You
Yes.
just follow the flow, baby. It'll be
Yeah.
there when you need it. And I met a woman once who has had 7 near-death experiences, very unique being. And she said to me, Andrea, I traveled all over the US for 1 year with no money, and everything I needed showed up
Mhm.
exactly when I needed it. Now, I'm
Mhm.
not saying don't have money, okay? Let's be clear.
Mhm.
Okay. It does operate in this reality. I'm not, but there's an energy and a sacredness about following our lives um, without having to let that dominate the force. And so when we talk about abundance, to me, it's following that flow, following creation, following that spark, and not letting money get in the way. And clearly some people have that figured out, but a lot of us don't because of the way we've been taught and the way we've been
Absolutely.
raised. Yeah. 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 Oh, trust me. Oh yeah. My father, first thing my father said, get that degree, Andrea, set up your retirement fund. It'll make you all happy and you'll be perfect when you're retiring. And now I realize at 53, I'm starting over and there will be no retirement because why would I do that?
Well,
I
it's
just,
funny because the narrative, I don't know about, I'm just now having more talks with people globally. And I'm now starting to understand the difference with the Canadian mentality versus other countries and the system. And we're very cookie cutter, we're a socialist country, we're a very cookie cutter country. We're very complacent, we don't go, we all we have the same, like, we send our kids to school, they get a 9 to 5 job, they go to university, we get that job, we stay in it for 25, 30 years until we're ready to retire, we pay out our house, we have a vacation once a year, we retire, we leave something for the kids when we die, and they continue the cycle, right? And it's all about the retirement, the good pension. That's the driving force. Like, you've made it, at least me growing up, that's what it was. You
oh
get
yeah.
a good job that's going to give you the good pension. That's what we're striving for, this pension. Right?
I had a really interesting conversation with a woman once, and I was a little bit stunned by the statement she was making. So I chose not to engage. But she had a 20 something who's in a job right now that makes her really unhappy. She's only like 24. And mom said to her, you only have to last another 20 years till you have your pension, and then you can do whatever you want to do. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
So talk about sucking the life out of a 24
That's
year
the
old,
death
right?
sentence, right?
No wonder she's going to be sick and dead by the time she's 45, right? And it that's okay. And it's not that that pattern is bad. Okay, so there's no judgment here.
Right, right.
We just don't realize that we're following those patterns and we're not inspiring the next generation or our generation. I mean, Christ, I'm 53 and I'm doing it, is to do it differently. And so that's when I talk about love evolution and the love experiment is about inspiration to
Mm.
doing life differently. And if the tools that we share resonate, great, but I don't care how you get there. Just maybe throw a different spin or a different lens on how you're living life and see if we can unlock some of that energy, that stagnant energy that we're sitting on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about that, let me, Mel Honeybee, I would love to be a guest, love those kinds of topics. I don't know if that's somebody you know, but hello, thank you for watching now. I want to talk about this when you said she had 20 years to go. And, it's important, I think, for me to inspire individuals to understand the truth of their soul. When we can support, I understand Andrea when I understand myself. And when I've come to a level of acceptance of understanding what nurtures me in this moment, and we talked about this moment because it can change tomorrow, and I am inspired and I act upon that, then I can support you to do the same and encourage you to do the same. I say to my kids, if you want to be the garbage man, I'm okay with that. If you love it and you're inspired by it and you can show the best you through that vehicle, because really, again, it's energy. It's how we're using something as a form of expression of our highest and greatest self. That is love. And if that's what it is, your parents have you.
Yeah, I've been reading a book that's really quite fascinating to me called Sacred Economics, written by Charles Eisenstein, and it's a heavy read on some level. But what he talks about is help bringing that tangible sacredness back into life, and how our economic systems have almost ripped it out of our existence. And you'll see it every day if you listen to this and you're just watching and responding to how people speak. They'll be excited about something, and then something in I call it the monetary or the economic world, will stop them. And so what I see over time is a bridge of being able to bring almost a way of life back into that doesn't segregate the economic part of our world, starting to bridge that in so that our systems, including our economic systems, start to support that flow, that bridge, so you don't have to be the 20-year life or pension and dead at 45 to be happy. It's to live all the way through, right, and experience all the way through.
Well, I'd love to
all of our
do a course or a segment or something like that, you and Bill.
Yeah, I would love that. You probably,
yeah.
That's kind of the jig, I feel, and I do feel that we're getting a chance to start to insert some of that new thinking and new consciousness, because that's the way the world can function if we actually let it.
Well, we got a lot to learn from you guys. We've got about 5 minutes left, and just as your heart opens up, what are some of the tools that somebody can walk away with listening today, of how they can really stay true to who they are, anchored within their truth, and start to expand that inner love?
I think the first thing is to consciously choose each and every day to be love, in whatever form that means for you today, and caring for oneself. I don't
Does that mean like
just
having a coffee? Does that mean having a bath? Does that mean meditating? Like, what does that feel like?
I think for every person, regretfully, that's different.
Okay.
Right. For some, that'll mean I'm going to call it a long lost trip that they've wanted to take but have never done. They've taken a leap of faith of picking up the phone and having the courage to have a conversation with somebody that they've been yearning to have. It could be finding someone or something that you've always wanted to connect with but didn't have the courage. I would say it's an act of inner courage to follow your desires and your truth, and not paying attention to the inner crazy voice, but also to what's around you telling you not to do it. And surrounding yourself with people that will inspire you to do so.
Do you encourage meditation at all?
That's a great question. I am not, interestingly, an active meditator. I could not sit still if God paid me.
And I love the fact that you're authentic and truthful about it.
I try. I'm extremely visual. And that's why the technologies that we worked with helped me significantly, simply because I really am a doer. I love doing. I love out. I love connecting. I like being. I like creating. And I couldn't sit still for the life of me. And so I think meditation is a very strong tool. But for me, it was not enough. And I think you're going to see more things that assist us, especially in North America, to being able in Europe to be able to express more of who we are, but not necessarily having to have long processes to get there, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it comes down to know thyself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've met some very profound meditators in my life, and what they do and create is off the charts, and I'm in honor of that.
Right. Absolutely.
But it goes back to doing what's right for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us this evening. It was an energetic talk.
Thank you for the space, my love.
It has been. So I want to remind our audience, guys, I want everybody to go out, meetandbill.ca, theloveexperiment.com, the Love Experiment, which is the Love Evolution, Facebook, Andrea.and.Austin, Instagram, and_and_Bill, LinkedIn, Andrea Lee Austin, Leigh, for Lee. Also, remember that I want you to be inspired. I'm asking you to look to Andrea for inspiration. Just with you're listening to today, it is very, very crystal clear that your commitment is there, that you are pioneering and leading the way in finding self-love, peeling back the onion layers on insecurity and doubt, and your authenticity of where you're at in this present moment and how it can change. I admire that, and I thank you for that, because it sets people up, other people free that feel that but just don't have the courage to do that. So we thank you very much for bringing that flavor to us this evening.
You're welcome. Much love.
So that's another edition of Tanya Talks. Join us again next week. Please like and subscribe Tanya Talks 4 on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can also find us on YouTube. Also visit thetanyaexperience.com. If you're ready to take your life to the next level, I'm ready to work with you one-on-one. Have a good evening, everyone, and we'll see you again next week. Bye, Andrea.
Bye.